participation guidelines. Today's meeting is open to the public. There is a chat box and a raise hand function, and we ask that those be used for most of the meeting during only by committee members and staff. But right now, if you're a member of the public, we'd like you to ask you to introduce yourself if you want to in there. You can put your name, your organizational affiliation if you have one, and if you want to share your gender pronouns in there as well. And then if you want to provide public comment, you can also indicate that in the chat box. There will be time for public comment just after the sort of opening inspiration and the introductions. And there will also be an opportunity during this meeting, during our break, which starts at 7 o'clock from 7 to 7:15. There will be 2 breakout rooms where the members of the public can, if they want to, go and chat with committee members during that time. We do that every other meeting. This meeting is being live streamed onto YouTube and it's also being recorded. There's also closed captioning available, and you can find that by going to your Zoom menu bar and clicking on the 3 little dots that say more, and then click on view full transcript. And you should be able to see. You should be able to see the closed captioning that way. So we're gonna, rather than these are just the guiding principles that we just have generally at the beginning of all of the meetings, but today we're going to start with an opening inspiration, after which requires that I stop sharing and start sharing a different screen. But before we do that, let's go ahead and do introductions with everybody's video kind of more full so that we can see each other more easily. So I'm going to start with committee members and then move on to staff. So Robin.
Good evening, Robin Wang, committee member, he, him.
Megan.
Hi, everybody. Megan, committee member, she, her.
Michael.
Good evening, Michael Eden Hill, committee member, he, him.
Maria.
Maria Sippin, she, they, committee member.
Faith.
Hi, everybody. I sure missed you last time. Faith Graham, committee member. Glad to be on with you.
Shanice.
Hello, Shanice Clark, committee member, she, they.
And Jeffrey. Oh, Jeffrey, I think you're muted.
Jeffrey Moreland, he, him, committee member.
Great. And Amanda Squempagnazi is our other committee member who is not here tonight. And now I'll move on to staff, and we'll start with Wendy.
Hi there, Wendy Kelfkin, she, her, and I am your tech and community support, so feel free to message me if you need anything.
And James.
Hi, good to see everybody. James Valdez, he, him, PCEF staff, and I will be the note taker today.
Angela.
Hi all, Angela Privadelli, she, her, and PCEF staff, and I will be presenting on MiniGrants tonight.
And we do have a couple other folks who on staff who are in the meeting but are not playing an active role today. So, but June Reyes is here, Janet Hammer is here, and Jason Ford is also here. I'm Katie Lister, I use she, her pronouns, and PCEF staff. Oh, I see Michael's hand went up. Did you have something, Michael?
Amanda, is Ranfees here tonight?
Oh, Ranfees is coming, but he's going to be a little bit late. And Amanda is not here. Yeah. Sam?
Thank you, Katie. It's good to be with you all tonight. Sam Grosso, he, him, PCEF staff. And in the audience here, we've got Gail with the East Portland Resilience Coalition, she, her, and the East Portland Action Plan. We've got Jenny Hall, she, her, with the Energy Trust of Oregon Solar Program. And we've got, hopefully I say this right, Ariadna, she, her, from the Getting There Together Coalition. Thank you, Katie.
All right. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it to Maria. Maria, did you want to say anything about this video before I open it up?
Sure. Hello, everyone. Thanks again for joining us. We're going to start the meeting with our opening inspiration, which is a video of one of our PCEF grantees, and I'll let DPav tell the story themselves. We also want to acknowledge the people who produced the video, Justin Katigbak, and also special shout out to PCEF staff, June Reyes, for being part of it as well. Okay, go ahead and roll.
All right. Move this over.
My name is Katya Reyna. I am the program director at DPav. DPav works to remove asphalt from overpaved places, and oftentimes these overpaved places are in historically disenfranchised communities. We're really excited to be a recipient of the PCEF grant. It's definitely the largest grant we've ever received. We feel really lucky to be one of the first recipients. And with this money, it's really going to change our whole organization. We've always been a pretty small and scrappy type of organization that relies on volunteers, which has been wonderful. And we're really excited for PCEF to really help us expand our organization. We're going to be able to hire a second staff person, really increase our capacity. It's a key part of these types of projects is workforce development. And so we've been able to hire POC contractors to come and do this beautiful work. So we don't always have to rely on volunteers, nor just hire, another white contractor. We can really invest in communities, invest in contractors that live nearby, that participate in this community, that love this community, and want to give back to it. So we've been really lucky to work with GPT Construction at this site at Powell Butte, also at Plaza 122, and they are going to help us finish out the last two projects in the Centennial School District, which PCEF will be funding. I think one of the biggest challenges is doing good community outreach. Oftentimes, grants are on a one-year track, and we have to finish it within a certain time, and we don't have, or we feel like we don't have the time to do that outreach and do that due diligence to really engage communities on a level that they deserve to be engaged. DPav really breaks that, I think. We often ask for extensions on our grants or try to go for 3-year grants like PCEF now because we need that time, and projects really deserve that time to envelop communities in a respectful manner and in a manner that actually reaches everybody.
All right. Let me just pull the presentation back up here real quick. And actually, I might just turn it over to Sam, who's going to give some program updates before we get going with the main part of the, with the first part of the agenda, which is a mini grant program update.
Thank you, Katie. So it's been a busy week and a lot of things coming together that we've been building towards. So I just wanted to give you a sneak peek, and I want to acknowledge these are truly preliminary numbers, and many things may change as we get in and get more details. But last night, our second round primary RFP did close, and we received over 160 applications for roughly $250 million in funding requests. So there's always little mix-ups in the numbers, but that's what we're seeing initially when we're pulling our reports. And generally speaking, the funding requests roughly line up with the allocations of the funding areas. So yes, bigger than overall, but are generally aligning with slightly a little bit of a higher funding request relative to its allocation for projects that are connected to workforce and contractor development. And we saw about, and I think as part of providing guidance, we saw about roughly 3.6 million in requests for planning grants, and we said we wanted to fund 2.5. So a lot of that guidance we set out was helpful, I think. We are still reviewing applications for the community distribution partner RFP, which closed yesterday as well, and we have to fine tune a few things there, but we've got a modest number of proposals there for that role, and we'll be digging through those here in a short while. So just big kudos, and we'll be turning around this week and are immediately jumping into doing all the eligibility review and then turning to the technical review and threshold review. So there's a lot of work ahead and a lot of this. Fortunately, hopefully it'll be quiet work where we can churn through some of this big body of review. Council this afternoon, kudos to Michael and Maria for presenting. The City Council this afternoon also approved the committee's recommendation to fund diversifying energy for the equipment purchasing partner role. So just big congratulations, and now we're turning around immediately and beginning to work with them so that we can get equipment here and make sure we've got equipment ready to go for spring cycle and getting these units out early this summer. We're also releasing several recruitments in the near term, starting with our administrative specialist position, which has been long overdue to get out there, and that should be posting, fingers crossed, next week. And we'll make sure that committee members know that some of the other opportunities are coming out, so you can share them within your networks. There is a lot of recruitment happening, and BHR, our Bureau of Human Resources, it's a good bit understaffed, so we'll see, but that's a big area where we're shifting our focus. Next, you should see this, and we're still working through, hopefully this will be released pretty soon, but we should be within the next couple of weeks releasing our recruitment for our High Roads Advisory Council. This is a body that last year we talked a good bit about, and it was a place where we could have more focused conversations on workforce and contractor development. We've pulled that together, and it's many things can pull our attention, but we'll be releasing that here pretty shortly, and hopefully we'll make sure you all see that so you can circulate that within your networks and nudge or encourage folks that you think would be great people to apply for that. We're also reviewing our RFP, where we're at the final stages of reviewing, or the early stages of reviewing proposals for a market study. So this is something we've been working on to get a market study so that we can come back and bring some more informed information to you all around the available workforce, the opportunities, and so that it can inform how we think about workforce and contractor equity agreements in our projects, as well as the workforce and contractor development grant. But we're just in the midst of that RFP closed a little bit ago, and we're reviewing that market study, and Ramfis is on a subcommittee there as part of that review. Or not a subcommittee, apologies, but Ramfis is on the review committee. And then lastly, and not least, and I'm sure there's many things I'm forgetting, but this has just been a big body of work that June and David have been leading, but our outreach cohort has been convening. This is the body of folks that'll be reviewing grants along with you all, and they just had their 4th meeting as part of their academy phase, where they're getting to get a deeper dive into the PCEF program and learning. So those are just a few things, missing many things, but it's a lot of things are coming to fruition that we've been working on for a little while, and I wanted to kind of give a nod to all those things and acknowledge the great work that staff are doing. Do folks have any questions about any of those things? And I want to just make sure if there are any immediate questions.
I see a question from Jenny Hall, and we'll allow it, even though Jenny, we usually don't take questions from now I don't. Now I see that Jenny. Now Jenny's hand is down. Maybe that was a mistake. Are there any questions from committee members?
Megan, I think your hand might be hard to see. You might just need to speak up.
Oh, it is totally hard to see. I see it now. Thank you.
Yeah, against the gray.
Blends
Just a really brief question, Sam. You said there was I forget what word you used, but for the heat response ones, you had a word, and I was just curious, like you could give a little more detail.
It was a modest number. It was roughly, part of it is there's because of the format and the way those come in, we need to vet a couple of those in terms of some of just the minimum qualifications, but it was roughly about 11 proposals that came in there. And so I think earlier on we were saying we were hoping to see, and so I think that it's still early, and we need to get into those proposals to review those and see sort of what capacity exists within those proposals to line up with what we hope to be about distribution of 3,000 units this summer. But we have that's where we're at, and there's still a little bit of teasing out some eligibility there.
And can you remind me about how that compares to what the general hoped number of leads was?
I think what we had put out there was about, we know that there's about 10 to 15 affordable housing providers, and so and then community distribution partners, meaning folks that are probably CBOs, not affordable housing providers, but community-based organizations that are interested in distributing. And so it's certainly lower, and so that's something we'll be going back and teasing out exactly just what are the gaps in terms of the target populations each of them are proposing that they would distribute to or be strong in reaching.
Any other questions for Sam? All right, well, then let's move on to the long-awaited, a couple times delayed mini-grant program update. Now they're finally getting it, and Angela is going to be regaling you. Angela, just let me know when to advance.
Okay. I feel like I should have had some really cool like entrance music, like it's time. Okay, mini grants. Hi everyone. I'm really excited to be bringing you this update. Let's jump on into it. But first, I'll just point out some of the lovely graphics that BPS staff have created. There's a few different graphics, but just think about the acorn of an idea turning into a large, strong oak tree. Okay, you can advance to the next one. Okay, so for today, I'm gonna do a little bit of overview and sort of refresher on mini grants, talk about the timeline, sort of what the intent of the program and how it works. And then I'll jump into the current results. I'll go over some of the observations and some of the immediate process improvements, and then we'll talk about next steps and discussion. And I'll just say here that today, you've heard this already, but it's just an update. There's no decision being made or deliberation or anything. So you get to just like take it in, ask questions. You can stop me along the way. Y'all have had this presentation for a little while now and the memo. So feel free to stop me along the way. Okay. All right, so mini grants timeline. Program design has taken place. We got community feedback on what we had created. And then we brought it to you all, got the approval. Then we started pumping out the outreach and doing a whole bunch of other behind the scenes stuff. And now we are at the tree where we have run 2 of the cycles, and I am here with the update. And then the apple is we will talk about at the sort of end part of the presentation today. Okay, so this is your refresher. Mini grants, PCEF mini grants were created to respond to small time-sensitive funding needs, create an on-ramp to PCEF, grow the universe of nonprofits doing environmental justice work, and provide a low barrier funding opportunity that prioritizes small and PCEF priority community reflective organizations. Just a little bit of framing in terms of this year of the program and then looking at next year. This year, since it's the first year, we're really launching the program, running the program, and then seeing how the program is being run. That's sort of what I'll be able to speak to today. Year 2, once we've closed out grants and we're able to do deeper evaluation, we're going to do the grantee evaluation, the goal setting, and some of the deeper process improvements, which will be coming back to you all with that. Okay, a little heavy on the text, but this is mostly review from your previous deliberations on mini grants. So I just wanted to highlight some of the asks that came from committee that have been baked into how the program is run. So in general, the first year we're testing the demand and the staff capacity. You'll see on the right, there's the council authorization, the 400,000 for the whole year split up into 4 100,000 quarterly disbursements, which turns into about roughly 20 grants per quarter that are being funded. When your grant agreement terms, up to $5,000, the $5,000 limit, it's a city code limit so that we don't have to go to council. It allows us to be a little bit faster and more responsive. The first priority is being given to small organizations, which we are defining for MiniGrants specifically as 3 or less full-time employees, and that serve and are led by PCEF priority communities. I'll get into a little bit more of the priority groups in a future slide. We always have at least two staff that do the eligibility screening. So, you know, this is a grant that is not scored. There's no sort of, you know, qualifying if one application is better than the other. It's just an eligibility screening that takes place. And then we do a prioritized selection. And then the random selection, we spent a lot of time talking about the prioritized random selection. And we are using it. We'll get into the priority groups, and it's, I'll just say that it's working really well. I'll explain a little bit more about how it's working in a later slide. Simple application, simple reporting, try to meet the needs of the small organizations and also that $5,000 funding level. Keep it modest. And then we intend to do process evaluation on how the program is being run after 3 quarters. So like I said, we're at 2 quarters right now. And then we're going to do a full program evaluation after the 5th quarter, because that will be after our first round of grantees will have closed out. And so we'll be able to really look back and see how it all works. Okay. All right. So how it works, the general process steps. Application deadline, that passes. We do the eligibility screening. And what we're really looking for there is, does the funding request relate to PCEF's goals of addressing climate change while advancing racial and social justice? From there, folks that are considered eligible, we then put into one of these priority groups. Folks that are not eligible, I do sort of follow up and outreach to explain to them why they weren't eligible and see if there's a opportunity to engage and learn with those folks. So then we put them into these 4 priority groups. We do the prioritized selection, and then we move into the grant agreements, payments. They do all of their beautiful work, and then the reporting and closeout. That's the sort of big picture of the steps that we take. So on the right, it's just a little graphic to show that the cool thing about this program is that you can apply at any time, which is really nice, because when we're talking to folks and they get interested, we always have something to point them to in terms of a current funding opportunity. As folks apply, they basically get placed into the group with the next deadline. So right now, anyone who's applying, the next deadline coming up is January 1. For anyone that was considered eligible but wasn't selected, they're given the option to be automatically carried over into the next quarter without having to reapply, which from groups that have done that, I've just heard a lot of appreciation for, to sort of make that lift a little bit easier for folks. The priority groups, oh, I got a little bit cut off, but priority group 1 is majority reflective of PCEF priority communities and who are small. And then we have group 2, majority reflective, not small. So that's 4 full-time staff or more. Group 3, they are not majority reflective, but they are small. Group 4, not majority reflective, not small. This is all behind the scenes stuff. This is how we sort of run things in the back. For folks that are applying, they don't have to categorize themselves into this. We take the information that they provide in their application, where they tell us about their demographics and who they serve, and they tell us about the size of the organization, and that's how we sort them. So basically the way that it works, we have $100,000. If we have $100,000 of requests from group 1, then we fund only groups from group 1. If we have let's say $70,000 of eligible requests from group one, we would fund those $70,000. And then for the last $30,000, we would move into group two, and then we would make selections there. Where the random selection comes in is, let's say in that same scenario, we have the $30,000 from group two, but we have more than $30,000 in request. That's when we do a random selection only within group two to decide who's going to get those $30,000. It's a little bit complex, but it's been working really well. And I can say for the folks that haven't been selected, who have reached out to me and had follow-up conversations where they've been eligible but haven't been selected, when I walk them through this, I've gotten a lot of really solid responses where they're like, okay, that makes a lot of sense, because generally they haven't been selected because they haven't been reflective of PCEF priority communities. So yeah, it's working, and you'll see that in a coming slide where we talk about the current results, but not yet. First, I want to just show you a little bit about what the application looks like. So this is a little screen grab of the application. There's no login required. It's available in 8 languages and fully available in 8 languages. So you can apply in those languages, and then we can do the translation on our end. We haven't had folks yet apply in other languages, but we have had folks access the applications in other languages. So it's always good to have that resource. And the screen that you see here, the way that we've simplified the application, there's no attachments. All of the information is contained within the application. So what you're seeing here is one of the funding types, which is attendance costs for trainings, workshops, and education. So you can see what the applicant would fill out. Are you requesting funds in this area? Yes, no. If yes, tell us how much and what you would use it for. That's how we get around a scope of work or a separate budget or anything like that. I'm able to take all of that information that they give us, and then I can, in my end, turn it into a scope of work and a budget into their grant agreement. So it really simplifies their experience and gives us what we need. Okay, I'm gonna take a little pause to drink some water and give anyone who may have a question a chance to ask it. And it's okay if you don't. Okay, here I go, one more sip. Faith coming in on that third sip. Go ahead.
Just in time is what I say. So my question is, it's not really a question for right now. It's can you send us, or can you remind us at some point, the eligibility criteria? And I know you said just briefly, like this are potentially future PCEF grantees, right, for PCEF projects. So that makes sense to me. But is there like a bullet list of eligibility requirements that you use?
Yes, there is, and I can send that to you. It's also on our website. So I will be sure to follow up with that. And I don't have it immediately handy.
On the website. Thank you.
Great. Okay, perfect. A good plug. Okay, so current results. So like I said, we've run 2 cycles. The first cycle, the application deadline was August 1. The second one was October 1. And here you can kind of see what the requests have looked like, and sort of by those priority groups. So if you need a refresher, I'm happy to do it, but just know that group 1, small, reflective. Group 2, reflective, not small, and then onwards. So as you can see here, August, that was our launch. We did a lot of outreach, did a big push, got a great response, 85 applications. We selected 20, all 20 were selected from group 1. And looking at the October cycle, we had 41 applications, and we can talk a little, I have some thoughts on outreach, and that I'll share a little bit later. And we selected 20, and you can see there we selected 14 from group 1, and then 6 were selected from group 2. And to explain the numbers a little bit, because the total request from group one was 124,600. That was the request. However, after eligibility screening, several of those folks were not eligible. And so we funded everyone from group one who applied who was eligible. And that turned out to be 70. And then we moved into selecting from group two. Oh, great. Thank you, Wendy. Nicely done. Eligibility in the chat. Okay, and so that kind of demonstrates what the demand has looked like for the program, and also how selection has shaken out. You can see there on the bottom for both cycles, 100% of the grantees have been grantees who serve and are majority reflective of PCEF priority populations. And then for August, it was 100% that were small. And for October, we had 70% that were from group one that were small. So yeah, current results. I'll pause there for a second. Okay, just looking at some numbers. Okay, all right, let's go to the next one. All right, so this chart just demonstrates what kinds of requests we're getting in. So these are the budget categories. So as I showed in that preview of the application, folks are asked in each area, similar to how in our budget we have the line items. These are their line items, and so they request in particular areas. And so you can see here kind of, you know, a little bit of varying distribution. Interesting to see that the majority of applicants have requested support when it comes to trainings, workshops, education, capacity building, but otherwise pretty dispersed. And then that other category, things that fall into other tend to be fiscal sponsorship fees. And this is at application. So sometimes if they don't know where it fits in, they'll throw it into other, which is why that percentage is so high. Oftentimes by the time we get to the grant agreement, we realize that it's actually that they wanted to buy something. And so we sort of recategorize it a little bit in the grant agreement stage. And this is for applicants. So this doesn't reflect necessarily the folks who are granted. This is of everyone who applied and had a request, what it's looking like. Okay.
We'll move to the next slide, but I just wanted to acknowledge that Ranfis Fiatoro, who is our other committee member, has joined the meeting.
Hi, Ranfis. Okay. Oh, Megan, do you want us to go back a slide?
Yeah, just a quick clarification question.
Yeah.
Maybe you said it out loud, but if you did, I missed it. But on that, yeah, the bar chart one, is this, you said applicants, but is it for money, or is the percentage of overall funds requested, or of the like applications?
This is for everyone who applied, which categories they applied to ask to request funding for. So of the total applicants, 65 wanted to buy goods. Of the total applicants, 61 wanted to pay for staff time.
Got it. So it's more like
and,
that from the org,
yeah, and they can
not like a representation of the money spent or requested.
No. Yeah, and they can request money in all of the funding categories, you know, but a lot of folks will request, you know, all 5,000 just in one, or they'll spread it out. Okay. We'll go to the next one.
It looks like Jeffrey has a question.
Oh, sorry. Hi, Jeffrey. Go ahead.
No problem. I might have already said this. If you did get the grant, the mini grant, when are you able to be eligible to get another one again? Is it a year, a couple years? I forgot.
Yeah, great question. I did not cover that. So your organizations can apply once per quarter, but they have the option to apply every quarter for different projects, or if they aren't selected, you know, for the same project. So folks can apply every quarter. Once you have been selected as a grantee, you know how there's that prioritization. It kind of there's even more complexity to it, because once you have received a grant, you're sort of, it reflects that same order, but you're sort of put at the end of the line. So we want to prioritize new folks getting the funding, but still kind of keep that same ordering of priority. So if someone from group one, priority group one, received a grant in the August cycle, and then they apply in the January cycle, they're very welcome to do that. However, as we're doing selections, we're always going to prioritize folks that haven't received grants in the year. So it'll kind of reset after 1 year. But depending on what demand looks like, just sort of never know. It could be that we end up funding someone for a second time, though it's very unlikely in the same year.
And one clarifying question. So that means they'll also be behind group 4. Then if you got the grant within that year, you're behind group 4 pretty much.
Yeah, exactly. You would be group 5.
And then it resets after, yeah.
Yep. And then if you were like group 2 and you had received a grant, you would turn into group 6 the second time around.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, I don't see any other hands up, so let's move on.
And we can always jump back at the Q&A at the end. Okay, so this is a word cloud of, this is across all applications and in response to describe your proposal. So it's really difficult to really illustrate and demonstrate all of the cool projects that are coming through. We're gonna read a little bit about them, and in your memo, you also saw some longer excerpts that I pulled from grantee applications to sort of illustrate the kind of work that's getting funded. But I wanted to just to show you some of the words and the requests that are coming through. Okay, you can go to the next one. Okay, who doesn't love a little interactive part of the presentation? I would love to get some folks to read out these quotes, if you don't mind. These are grantee project examples. These are quotes from applicants themselves. Feel free to jump in and read some, please.
Okay. Educate our community about how to save electricity and living in the community with environmental safety.
Assess our community understanding on environmental justice and their needs. This combines our 3-year strategic plan to develop youth leadership by attracting next generation leaders.
Staff to attend trainings on climate change, resilience, action. Engage the Indigenous community to hear climate change impacts and ideas for climate adaptation and action. Gather an advisory of Indigenous community members who have experience in Indigenous traditional ecological knowledge and Western bioecology related to climate adaptation.
An Indigenous-led festival that raises awareness about non-human-led restoration, shares education about traditional ecological knowledge, and creates a safe, welcoming environment to increase access to nature for Black, Indigenous, and people of color.
Maintain 8 acres and more land lease while preparing seasonal farmers to buy essential proper agricultural equipment to effectively gain more organic produce to feed communities of color and low income in large quantities.
Thanks, guys. That was really nice. So that just gives you a taste for what we're seeing coming through. There's so much cool work, and I feel like this really speaks to how much $5,000 can do. You know, I think that especially when we're granting and such big dollars, it's easy to think of $5,000 as just tiny drops in the bucket, but small organizations can do so much with that amount of funding. So yeah, that is that. Okay. All right. So now doing a little bit of observation and process improvement. You'll see, I'll review this in a second. In the memo, you'll see that we review other parts of sort of evaluation of the program that I am not covering today. That's going to be part of a proper evaluation process. These are just sort of this moment in time, you know, what is happening that I can speak to. Once we do a deeper dive, we'll be able to give a little bit more of a comprehensive look at some of the other metrics and information. But current observations, we're seeing a definite mix in the type of requests. A lot of requests have been for small project support, and many others have also been requesting grant writing support. But we weren't sure, especially since, you know, with our RFPs, if it was all going to come in as grant writing or what. But we're seeing that it's very, very varied. Ooh, that was a lot of very. It was varied. Another thing that we're seeing is that outreach is key. So we had that huge push for the launch. We did info sessions, we did office hours, we did events, many emails, social media pushes. There was a lot there. We got a great response. We had a little bit less bandwidth the second time around to do that push. And so we definitely saw a drop in numbers. And so what we don't know yet is if that drop in numbers is sort of an evening out of what demand looks like over time, or if it's really linked to the amount of energy that we put into the outreach, or a combination of both. But we definitely want to keep outreach as a key element, as something that we do throughout the year to keep it in front of mind for folks. Staff capacity. So I am the staff running this, and capacity can be limited. So a lot of these folks have a lot of capacity needs, wanting one-on-one support. We definitely do what we can, but it's limited in terms of how much of that support we're able to provide currently. And then the demographic question. So for the launch of the application, again, we're trying to see how simple can we keep the application while still getting the information that we need to have integrity in our process. We found that the demographic questions that we were asking got us most of the way there, but we were just lacking a little bit of detail and nuance that we just realized we needed to feel really good about how we were evaluating folks and putting them into the priority groups. And so that gets us into the process improvements. We have already taken a deep dive into that, and we edited the demographic questions, and they're currently going live in the application. And so for the next few rounds, that will be there, and we'll be able to have a little bit more granular detail into the demographics of the groups and who they serve in the way that we structured those questions, while still keeping it pretty simple. And like I said before, we have plans to keep the outreach consistent as we go ahead. Okay, and so before I jump to this, I wanted to respond. Can you actually go back one? One thing that I wanted to respond to, Megan, you had reached out after the information was sent out and had some questions about disability serving organizations. So I wanted to mention this now because I have some responses for you. However, it's only a part of the answer to your question. So could you maybe, would you mind if I put you on the spot to just capture a little bit of what you asked, and then I can hop in with a response?
Sure, except that was a month ago. I don't have it pulled up in front of me right now, but I think I just asked if you could offer a little bit more breakdown in terms, and actually listening to this tonight, and I don't have the memo also pulled up, but like just a breakdown in the priority. You just said, you know, org serving priority communities, but it would be helpful to even understand more about that. Like, is it because we have a couple different communities, people of color, low income, folks with disabilities, although they're targeted more in the workforce side. But anyway, so any sort of breakdown of that, I think, would be enlightening for us.
Great, thank you. So specifically to the question around organizations that serve folks with disabilities. So part of the limitation of the response is the way that we structured it, and this is part of that process improvement. We sort of had it in a little bit of an aggregate where it was like a checklist. Tell us, you know, which communities does your organization serve? Does at least half, word beneficiaries, the beneficiaries of your organizations, who are the majority, and then they would check them off. And then they would say how much of their organization, staff, leadership, and board reflects those groups. So we have that, and that's how we were able to run this prioritization. And we have information about who checked off which communities. So specific to applicants who said that they serve people with disabilities, for the August cycle, we had 32 applicants. And for the total granted, we had 6. And then for the October cycle, the total who applied was 17, and then the total granted was 8. And so the limitation there is that they said that they serve folks with disabilities. And then when they answered that they are, you know, majority or not majority reflective, we haven't been able to do a one-to-one to know which communities they are reflective of, because it was a list. That is the major change that we've made. It's now a one-to-one. So now the structure, instead of a checklist of saying, these are the priority communities, you know, tell us which ones. Now it's, do you serve Black, Indigenous people and people of color? Does the majority of your organization benefit these folks? If yes, does your organization, does more than half or less than half of your organization's staff and board reflect this community? And then so we go one by one. So we'll be able to have a little bit more of that granularity to know who they are serving and who specifically they are reflective of.
And
I'll have a few follow-up questions there.
Yeah.
One is, I think that you implied that, you know, folks might be serving people that fit all those categories, but they could just check all.
Say yes.
It's a check all. And then on the serving folks with disabilities or staff and board, in our larger RFP, I know we modified language around that based on feedback from those orgs, that wasn't maybe the most appropriate for that community at this point in time. So have we also kind of followed that line through this grant?
We have, yeah. So in a simplified way, but same language, and we're keeping it consistent. So as language has evolved in our larger RFP, we've carried that over into MiniGrants in terms of how we describe PCEF priority communities. And then specifically with the disability serving orgs, there's a couple more. I can follow up and share this, and I would welcome everyone kind of doing a walkthrough of the application, because I think that would be cool and informative. But after this final demographic change goes live, which should be by early next week, so we do have language specifically around organizations that primarily serve people with intellectual or developmental disabilities, and that the prioritization is different when it comes to the staff, leadership, and board being reflective of those groups. So we have carried it over.
And then my final follow-up question is just based on all that disaggregation or breaking down, what are the trends in terms of who applied and who funded and who was funded in terms of our priority communities? To any extent you can like offer a little more insight into that. Mainly, I think my larger question is, who are we missing from our priority communities in our outreach and mini grant efforts, especially because I really see this mini grant as like building capacity in orgs to apply for future RFPs. So it just seems like a really important place to be really cognizant of who we're reaching and who we're not of our priority community. So any sense of like the breakdown of that?
And Angela, if you don't mind, if I could just hop in here, because it is 6:55 and we have a break, and then today is the day where we have members of the public going into breakouts with committee meetings. And so I would like to ask, I don't want to shortchange the mini grant presentation, especially after delaying it a couple of times. So I'd like to ask that we just kind of pick up maybe the Q&A portion of this after the break. And then if Sam, if you feel like that's okay, and we can hopefully get through the Okay, good deal. I got a thumbs up. So I'd like to call a break now. Thank you, Angela. That was great. And we'll pick it back up after the break. So it's 6:57. Let's call it a real 5-minute break. And then Wendy will send folks into 2 breakout rooms, send committee members into 2 breakout rooms from about 7:02 to 7:15. We'll just make it a 13-minute break. And then members of the public, you will be able to choose which breakout room you want to go to. And you'll see that by there's these sort of a box with 4 boxes inside of it should appear, or a pop-up window will appear, and you can send yourself to whatever breakout room you want to. Okay, so let's go on a break. See you all soon.
Okay, folks, I am going to go ahead and open up the breakout rooms, and committee members will be automatically assigned, and then anyone else should be able to choose your room. If anybody gets stranded, please don't hesitate to message me in the chat, and we'll figure it out together. We'll get you found. All right, here we go. Rooms are open. Hi, Kathy, are you able to see where you can opt into a breakout room?
Let's see, I see Katie and Jeffrey.
Yeah, they shouldn't. Ooh. Katie is here. Jeffrey is going. Gradually, folks are getting to their rooms.
Can you give me a choice to move again, maybe?
At the bottom, do you see the bottom of your screen? Do you see some boxes?
Yes.
So if you click on one of those.
Got it. There are 2 rooms. Yay. Okay, I found them.
Okay, great.
So I just click on a room.
Yep.
Okay.
Robin.
I'm trying to get into room 2 because it's smaller.
Okay. Maria, I have you assigned to room 1. I'm not sure why you're not getting pulled over there. Kathy, how's it working? Not letting you join?
Not letting me join. No.
Oh, which one would you like I think I can assign you. Which one would you like to go to?
Into 2. It has fewer people in it.
Okay. Oh, how do let's see, assign to, no. Gosh, I don't know if I can assign you after the room has opened. Wait, here we go. I got you. Room 2.
Thank you.
And Maria, do you want me to try to assign you to a room? Or reassign you to the room that you were assigned to? Let's see. I'm not showing you as unassigned.
Jenny Hall knows us too well. She bailed for exactly 15 minutes and then came back. She's in the waiting room.
All right, welcome back, everyone. All right, so let's just go ahead and get started again. And I think we'll pick up where we left off. And we were having kind of these next steps and discussion related to the mini grant program. And Megan had asked a question. I don't know, Megan, if you can kind of recall the question, or Angela, if you held that in your head through the break, but if you want to kind of pick up from there.
Okay, I thought I was like gonna be ready to hold it, and then I was in a breakout room and I lost the grip. Megan, could you just
I was just asking if you had any more sense of a breakdown from our priority community besides you mentioned a little bit about org serving folks with disabilities, but just any more breakdown about who we're reaching and not through this program.
Great. The short answer is not right now. But I will. That's part of that deeper dive, that it's the way data is collected in how we have the application. It takes some manual digging through everything to pull that together. But that will be part of the evaluation. And so that is a really good segue into some of this discussion. And Katie, can you tell me about how much time, just so I have an eye on it?
I think that if we can keep this conversation to 10 minutes, that would be great. And then we can get on to the committee recruitment conversation.
Sweet. Okay, thank you. Okay, so I'll just go over the next steps real quick. January 1 is our next deadline. That'll be our third funding cycle. Spring 2022 is when work on program performance evaluation will be happening. And so that's where I'll be digging into some of that information that we were just talking about, be able to present that. We will be presenting to you with an ask ahead of the April 2022 City Council ordinance, because part of that ordinance that is going to be part of the second RFP, grantees is also going to be sort of allocating next year's mini grant fund. So there will be a more formal presentation and ask that will come then. And then summer of 2022 is when we will start evaluating the grantee performance, because that will be the time when the first grantees will have started to close out and we'll be able to start evaluating their performance. So we have some discussion questions there that are just sort of open to help guide this. But one of the pieces that kind of takes Megan's start and continues it is, what kind of information are you all excited to hear about as we look at doing a more thorough evaluation? I asked that question with a little asterisk of a simple application does somewhat limit the depth of the data that we can pull out of it. But I want to hear what you all are looking for so that I can get as close as possible to giving you those answers with what we have as I plan ahead. And anything else that you want to talk about? Robin.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we talked about with these small mini grants is that they could be a springboard for some organizations to get bigger and grow over time. So I don't need an answer now, but I would just be, and I know it's relatively soon, but I would just be kind of curious, if that in effect is happening. Or these mini grants an opportunity for an organization to springboard to, something bigger in the future.
Yeah, thanks for that. Anecdotally, we are definitely seeing mini grant recipients in the current RFP, which is really exciting. As I was looking through, it was like, oh, so they're in there. I don't have the full analysis of it yet, but that will come. And it's interesting because there's definitely the folks that applied for grant writing support. They were explicit that they were going to be applying for PCEF. So we kind of like know that and expect it. And then there are other folks that applied for small projects and we're still seeing them in the RFP. So it's pretty cool to see, but I'll have a more detailed breakdown of that.
I know that I said it in the small groups. I forgot to raise my hand. But I'm really impressed with how far $5,000 can go for a small organization. I sort of, it's been so long since I've worked with a small organization that I forget that like $5,000 can literally affect hundreds of people when used by a small organization. And so I want to thank you for the memo and sort of reminding us that mini grants can make a big difference too. So thank you.
I go with the tagline. That was great.
I'm interested in learning about, oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry, Maria.
No, I've gotten to ask a lot. Go ahead, Maria, please.
Oh, I'm just interested in learning about how perhaps some of the grantees might have been able to use the funds for COVID-related challenges, or if there's anything that they were able to do differently related to COVID because of the funding, or if they have COVID needs that maybe need a little more attention.
Thanks, Maria. I think that's good for us to keep in mind. I feel like anecdotally in conversations, I've heard some things, but I'll definitely think about that in terms of one of the things that happen in terms of reporting. There's a sort of end of grant reporting that happens at the very end, but then there's a mid-grant check-in, which is really just a conversation with me. So that's helpful as things for me to sort of keep an eye out for in terms of what I'm hearing about how the work is going. Megan?
Yeah, this is not something I expect you to answer today, but you brought it up. And I think for the annual report, when you come back, I'd love to hear some elaboration, but you mentioned how there's kind of, you see or sense a need for more staff support than you're able to provide due to, you kind of being the only staff member on this full time. So I'm just curious, like what other kinds of supports and one-on-one help is needed, or like I would just love some sort of assessment of the match of need to capacity. And maybe that'll be best done kind of after a full year cycle to really get a better sense after kind of startup mode.
Yeah, totally. I think this first year is less measuring like what does it take to run at what funding level in terms of the staff side, what kind of support are folks needing? Some folks are like, I need grant writing, I'm good, take it and run. And other folks are like, this is my first time, like, help me, think through this. But we have other things coming online, including capacity building, kind of contracting and other kinds of work that will be coming on that we'll be able to point folks towards. So I think we'll have a better kind of like vision of all of that a little bit down the line.
All right. Well, I think if there, I see Ranfis's hand.
Yeah, I'll just be quick and brief. No, thanks, Angela, and appreciate all the work that you're doing. I've always appreciate all the work that PCEF staff is doing in helping build and jumpstart these programs. And anytime you're doing something foundational, I think there's things you're going to learn and refine. And that takes a lot of time. And I don't know about everyone else, but when I start a new job, it takes me a good year and a half to really get my grounding. So I think you've all done really foundational work here. So I'm just excited. I think you noted, I guess to be in a little contrast here with Michael, $5,000, I don't have huge expectations about the performance of grants. One thing just in general, a theme that I have here as we sort of take a step back and look at this program and other programs is what's missing. $5,000 to help grow an organization, there might be some small pieces that could help do that, but maybe is not the big lift for a capacity building, type grant. So definitely, we'll love to hear, from staff as we take a step back and look what's working, what's missing, and what other pieces do we need to support and advance the work. So seems like you've got some really great ideas as we were discussing in our small group, and love to continue to hear more from other staff on this and from committee members and the general public. But just want to express thank you and all the work that you're doing.
All right. Well, thank you, Angela, and thank you, committee members, for those questions and that input. And we'll look forward to kind of the next step, when we come back in the spring with a more of an update and a more formal ask. So thanks, Angela. Great job. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over now to Sam. And Sam is going to talk about committee member recruitment.
I think, Katie, we can probably even just turn off the screen share at this point.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Let me bring my screens now back to one place. All right. It's good to have a lighter meeting today, but I'm coming in for this one. So we're talking about committee member recruitment because Amanda has indicated that she does plan to roll off, in part because of just her graduate school obligations and other things that as folks have noticed, that prevented her from being able to show up on our Wednesday night meetings. And we've certainly talked through that, and I'm happy to connect with folks afterwards. But Amanda has indicated that, and as well as Jeffrey has indicated that Jeffrey does plan, has other future plans and space that he's going to need to create. So we'll have 2 vacancies, and Amanda's going to be rolling off sooner, and we're working on just talking that through. But Jeffrey, you can say Jeffrey has agreed to stay on through this funding round and getting through this next round of making funding recommendations to City Council, which we're happy to have. We're happy to have you around to that point, Jeffrey. But what that brings us to is we're going to go through a recruitment round, and so Jeffrey, particularly in particular, how the specific spot that per our code, we do need to have someone that has experience promoting minority-owned and women-owned businesses. And then for Amanda, there's a lot of work done within the committee to bring on a committee member with particular knowledge and a deep understanding and connection to Native American history, as well as the Native American community and issues surrounding the urban Indian experience. And so I wanted to, that's how sort of some of the characteristics that obviously individuals bring much more than that, and so I don't want to boil things down to that, but those are some characteristics we'll need to be thinking about, and just wanted to start with pointing that out. What I think what we would do is come back to you all in the next meeting, December 15th, with a plan for recruitment and what timeline for recruitment, as well as an ask for you all to see who'd be interested to participate on a recruitment subcommittee. And this would be a body that would review the applications, namely review the applications and make a recommendation to the full committee. And so that's mainly it. And I just wanted to give the floor for some space for folks to either ask questions, express any thoughts of what you'd like to see outside of sort of the two characteristics that I spoke to, at least, you know, in practice. It certainly doesn't sit within the code, but that you all made an intentional recruitment around Amanda's position, and whether that's the sort of the approach you'd want to take again, and then anything else. And I just wanted to give some space for that conversation here, and then so that we can come back to you all with a little bit more refined plan next meeting for you all to make a decision on recruitment.
Michael?
I was wondering if you had reached out to anybody, because Amanda's recruitment was fairly recent in my mind. This might not be very true, but in my mind, it was fairly recent. Have you reached out to any of the other applicants? Because I remember we had some pretty good applicants during that round, and I was just wondering if you've done any outreach to any of those applicants.
Thank you, Michael. I have put an initial feeler back out, and so that's where it's at. And you know, folks' lives have shifted since that time, and obligations have changed. So I think there's follow-up conversations, but I have reached out to some of our shortlisted candidates from the last round, and want to see sort of how this conversation goes, and pick that conversation back up. But I have at least put the initial feeler out and expressed that we may have vacancy coming up.
Ramses?
I just want to, I guess, since Jeffrey, you're here, just wanted to thank you for your service on this committee, and hopefully we'll have you for maybe a couple more meetings or a few more meetings. Oh, it sounds like till March. So one more meeting. Well, I get
no. I'm just saying, let's not do this. Don't go too far. Jeffrey's with us through the next funding round, so I just don't want to get too far. So several more meetings, aren't we?
Got it. Well, I do just want to. Well, thank you. Thanks for the clarity there. Well, I do just want to thank Jeffrey, and we'll have more time to thank Jeffrey. So, but I think, you know, just been reflecting in some of our last meetings, and I think I just want to know it just here, you know, Jeffrey, I think you just played a really tremendous role in just, you know, challenging us and thinking about the needs here. And as we frame this project about not leaving minority firms behind, or BIPOC firms. So, you know, I think it'd be really critical, you know, to get, I think, constructive feedback from Jeffrey about how do we continue to create the space, and how do we challenge the institution here at PCEF. And you know, Amanda's not here, but say the same thing about Amanda. Like, I think there's, you know, I think some of the themes we've heard in these meetings has been just challenging us about the pace of the work, and thinking about, you know, this from the perspective of community members, and also just asking the question about who's missing. So, and I think we made it really intentional to make sure that we had a Native Indigenous representative on this committee, and I hope that continues to be the case. And I continue to hope to the case that we have a representative that's from, you know, the minority or BIPOC contracting community. So I'd love to hear any critiques or thoughts from Jeffrey about how we should be thinking about recruitment and creating that space here at PCEF, or what are things that we can do as a committee or as an organization. But those are just my current, I just want to share those 2 cents, and just definitely want to create that space to hear that feedback from both Jeffrey and Amanda.
Yes, thanks, Ramses. For me, this has been a great experience for me. You know, I have some opportunities coming up. So as Sam talked about, I need a certain level of flexibility. But I really want to say that I really enjoyed this experience with everyone, and you guys have been wonderful to work with in my first committee, and this is a standard for me from this point forward if I decide to get on another committee at some point. So I just want to express my gratitude to everybody here. And I also would like to right now put my hat in for being a part of the subcommittee for my replacement, if you guys will have me with that, so I can give you that guys the input that you're referring to, Ramses.
Awesome.
Thanks, Jeffrey.
Megan?
Yeah, my comment isn't really about, well, Jeffrey, I'm really glad you're volunteering to be on the committee to find a replacement, because I think your insight will be invaluable. But just kind of a side comment on all this, I'm curious, staff, if we could make a practice of you all having some sort of exit interview with outgoing committee members, like, like businesses, organizations do, schools do, and students got something like that in parts, so that we can kind of build, have a place for you all to learn what, kind of keep improving the experience for committee members, and et cetera. Like, I feel like that would be a good practice. I'm not quite sure what it would look like, but maybe you all could.
Michael?
I know I've said this before. So I also think that and this isn't necessarily for Jeffrey, but I'm starting my secret list of my replacement, and who I'd like to recruit to replace me, that has experience in the solar industry, doesn't have any ties or like real what do we call that when you have
Conflict of interest.
Thank you, conflict of interest. And so, I'm already starting to ask folks about, and I don't know if I'm leaving in 2 more years or in 6 more years, but I'm already asking, around and trying to cultivate folks to be interested in this, that are interested in environmental justice, and or BIPOC folks that are. So I hope as everybody thinks forward to when their term may end, that you might be thinking about other people to push forward that have sort of the same expertise that you do, to take your place.
Yeah, Fred, and Megan, thank you for the suggestion on the exit interview. It's connected with Andrew Hamburger occasionally here and there, but that was something that was in a sense, in a formal way that I think I'd wanted to go through. We missed that opportunity, and so Amanda and I have been talking about just how we want to close things out, and that's a great suggestion. So we'll certainly do that, and we'll find the time when we get closer to that date. That's still a little bit away with Jeffrey to do so as well. So it's going to be a busy bit, but what I suspect is that these recruitments would come out in the early part of the new year, and then we would ideally be coming right back to council. And I'm not exactly sure what the sequencing as we come back to council, but right around all the time when we're coming potentially back with funding recommendations for new appointments. So we'll certainly get there. And what I hope between, I know I see a hand, but I hope is other folks just think about being on a recruitment subcommittee. Amanda, or Michael, Maria, and Megan were on the recruitment subcommittee last go around, and so you all can check with them. But it was a handful of meetings that we pulled together. So it isn't a big lift, but it's certainly a valuable one.
Ramses?
I hope that we can, in the next process, to just begin to challenge, I think, the concept of conflict of interest. And it's been kind of blurry a bit between the sort of debate between conflict of interest and perception of conflict of interest. I think the reality at some point, we as a committee just need to reckon that probably some of the best input that we can get at a committee level are folks who have experience actually applying for the PCEF program. I think those are folks who are going to have really substantive feedback overall about how we can improve the user experience, whether it's a large or small organization. I think in that same notion, folks, businesses who are trying to crack the nut and enter the clean energy space, where we see huge disparities and a lack of, I'm just gonna say, like BIPOC firms in the solar industry. And I bring some expertise, others do too in our space. But I think the reality is at some point, I think we have to understand what the root value is of conflict of interest, and understanding that just because a firm or a committee member has skin in the game for improving this program, like that's might be one of the things that we actually need to improve the PCEF program in the next iteration. So I just want to sort of, I think, challenge us as an entity to keep pushing that, because I think, I think we can only go so far unless we have folks who are really trying to change what this sector and this industry looks like. So I just want to at least share that, because I think it's something that I think we as a city grappled as we were, appointing who was on this committee. And I just want to recognize that's a thing that I think we just inherited now that we are up and running as a program.
Thanks, Francis. So Sam, I just want
to be checked. What I will be, I'll just say, I will be checking in with the team to figure out a location. We didn't get to do it to celebrate the RFP, but a location to come together that's outside, in covered, so that at least we can make sure we celebrate with Amanda before she heads off, and maybe bring Andrew Hamburg back to celebrate with us. So that's on my agenda. And if folks do have a suggestion for an outdoor location that may fit that mold, I encourage committee members to please, or others to share that with myself.
So before we go to closing comments, I just wanted to make sure that I heard, Sam, I heard kind of two questions in your opening comments about committee recruitment. One was around interest from committee members in serving on a subcommittee, a recruitment subcommittee, and that doesn't need to be answered then, but I just wanted to make sure that was a clear ask. Jeffrey wants to serve, so that's great, but we probably need a couple of more. And then the other thing was just a clarification that the committee does want to commit to replacing Amanda with another person from the Native community in Portland. And even though that's not in our code, but it is a decision that the committee made. So just wanted to kind of say that those were kind of the two things. I think I see people nodding, and I heard one person say that they did want to affirm that, but just wanted to make sure that was clear.
Thank you, Katie. I'm seeing nodding heads, but that's exactly right. I wanted to get a sense for those are the two things to put out there, that folks, one, think about serving on a recruitment subcommittee. So when we come back next week and we ask, we get a clear sense. And then two, that we're gonna put together a proposal that was sort of our sense coming into this meeting, and seeing the nods around the room, that that we would carry forward with the similar recruitment language that we used in order to call in and bring in Amanda with the expertise that she carries and with the experience she carries. So seeing that's what we'll bring back to you all next week, two sets of language for the two different sort of profiles or recruitments that we'll do and run alongside each other. Benefit of this is we're also recruiting for the High Roads Council in short order. So you all will see that, and we'll encourage you all to get the word out, but that'll be another opportunity to just get a sense for who comes through that process. And so that'll help us potentially shortlist another cohort or a list of candidates that we may be able to pull in for the committee member role. So we've got a handful of things that'll hopefully work really well together.
All right. Well, we don't have this was the last thing on our agenda, and so it's I just want to open it up if there are any closing comments that committee members want to make. We do have another meeting on December 15th, and Sam will be bringing back sort of a little bit more of a committee recruitment plan for you all. And then the other thing on that agenda is the reporting and evaluation subcommittee kind of report out. And So, Sam?
Well, I think as I'm looking at text messages here from Michael. I think the one thing we may do is maybe just collectively talk about some of the other work that committees that we've talked about happening within subcommittee space. One was our working agreements that had been done that Michael was working on with Andrea that was never brought to completion. And so wanting folks just to think about other things. And so maybe we'll just collectively bring forward a few things, and we'll make sure we email about those in advance so folks can get a chance to think about them and what the obligation could look like, because there's a body of work we've sort of shelved that we need to bring back. So it's because it seems like the topic of conversations is subcommittees. That's what we'll make sure it lands within that. But obviously a big body of the work being around the reporting and evaluation subcommittee.
Great. Be a committee meeting about subcommittees.
Michael, we'll get you another person soon.
I was going to raise my hand.
Go for it, Michael.
For things like the High Road Committee, can we recommend people in?
Please, yes, we've got a list of, we've been building out a list of folks that we need to do some targeted recruitment for, knowing that but we'll certainly pull out the broader list. And as we share that, we recommend that you help get the word out for that. And in addition, send us folks so that we can kind of make sure we give a little soft nudge as well to folks to consider applying or reach out to us if they have questions.
I'll just chime in here. Happy to support any efforts around recruiting. Love to be like a backup consideration for recruitment for the PCEF committee. I do want to give space for other folks to step in, but just wanted to at least verbalize that, and happy to think of recruiting for other committees that might exist. So I just wanted to note that before jumping off.
Any other closing comments? All right, well, I think then we are done. Thank you all for coming to the meeting. Thanks to Jenny and Kathy, our members of the public, for sticking with us. And we will see you all in a couple of weeks.
Bye.
Night, everyone. Bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you so much.